So thanks everyone for joining the webinar. The topic of today's webinar is using analytics to drive social adoption. Before we jump into things and get started, some quick housekeeping. First of all, this webinar is being recorded, and we'll send a recording to everyone in the next day or so once it's uploaded. Twitter, you can connect with us there using either @Cardiolog or @BillRyan61. And finally, questions. We will be leaving time for questions towards the end of today's webinar. And so if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to send them through the GoToWebinar panel. You'll see an area there that says questions. And again, we'll take all your questions towards the end of today's webinar. Our agenda, we're going to start with a very short and quick introduction about Cardiolog and what we do. From there, we'll jump into using analytics to drive social adoption. I'll introduce our guest speaker today. We'll have a short demo to showcase some of the things that we're talking about during the webinar, and then we'll conclude with answering those questions. So as a quick introduction, those of you who are not familiar with Intlock, we've been around for almost 10 years now, since 2005, based out of Boston, and we're focused on one area, and that's analytics for enterprise platforms. So everything from an intranet, different versions of SharePoint, as you can see at the bottom of my screen, to social platforms like Yammer and Citrion, and other enterprise tools that can be CRM, ERP systems, and so forth. But the idea is to provide a robust analytics engine for those enterprise solutions. We talk to customers about three main pillars that we work with them on. The first is monitor, and here we're able to collect data around the usage of these environments, whether it's SharePoint or Yammer, in order for us to better measure what's going on there. The second pillar is engage. Our goal is to be proactive and ask our users what are their needs and pain points in SharePoint and Yammer and other platforms. And then finally, enhance. It's key for us to make sure the first two pillars are actionable and allow us to constantly improve SharePoint for our users. So that's a brief introduction. As I mentioned, we have a guest speaker today, and I'll quickly introduce our speaker, Bill Ryan. He's been working in the IT space for over 25 years, working with SharePoint since 2005, a blogger and writer on places like CMS Wire. He's a Microsoft certified IT professional, and lots more. Bill, thanks so much for joining the webinar today.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks for that, for the nice introduction. I hope everyone's having a great day, and happy Wednesday. So let's get into the discussion here in terms of the, I'm not sure if I have control yet.
All right, let's try that one more time.
There we go. Now I have control. So I want to talk a little bit about the paradigm shifts in social collaboration. We're seeing a significant shift from on-prem deployments for SharePoint and for all collaboration platforms, really, when you think about where the industry is going, into the cloud. And what does that mean for your organization? From an implementation perspective, and as an implementation professional, I see a lot of companies that are running multiple versions of SharePoint. Many large organizations are still running SharePoint 2010 at the same time that they have 2013 deployments. And now with Office 365 coming along, now we have a new sort of shift in direction. And it's really causing a lot of concern and angst in the IT community, and especially within the businesses, with respect to which direction they should go, and how do we maintain control, and how do we understand how our platform is being used across all of these multiple platforms that we've built out and we've deployed. And of course now with Microsoft's purchase of Yammer, and Yammer being the default social platform for Microsoft going forward, Jared Spataro in 2012 penned a blog post basically stating that going forward, Microsoft was not going to invest any further in the on-prem social capabilities of the SharePoint platform, that Yammer is the direction that the organization is going, and that he was encouraging everyone to move forward with adopting Yammer as a platform by itself. Well, Yammer as a product was already pretty successful and had some significant deployments into the enterprise. So now we have a situation where we have social capabilities that are built into the SharePoint product, and we have social capabilities built into Yammer. And now the concern is not only are we moving to Office 365 and moving our overall collaboration capabilities into the cloud, but now we're using Yammer, which is a completely separate platform and environment. Microsoft is moving towards integrating those two into the Office 365 platform, and they're working very hard to make that happen. But it will take some time before those two platforms are truly integrated, and we have access to metrics across both platforms in one environment. So the whole concept here is that hybrid is the new normal. And so everyone is talking about hybrid. When you look at all of the education that Microsoft is putting out with respect to SharePoint and your IT certifications, hybrid is the way to go. Every company that I talk to is interested in deploying some kind of a hybrid scenario where some of their collaboration is on-prem and some of their collaboration is in the cloud, and they're using Yammer, and they want to understand how to be able to deploy all three. The problem here is that the metrics are scattered across all of these systems. You have siloed data. So now you have adoption metrics and utilization metrics in SharePoint on-premises behind your firewall. You have utilization metrics and usage analysis capabilities in Yammer by itself, which is a separate silo. And then you have SharePoint in the cloud, SharePoint Online, which also has its own set of metrics. How do you bring all of this together, and how do you drive adoption? You can see that with this scattered scenario, it's incredibly difficult to get a clear picture. With SharePoint 2010, there was some pretty good out-of-the-box analytics that came with the SharePoint platform. When Microsoft moved to SharePoint 2013, just going to page down here. When Microsoft moved to SharePoint 2013, a lot of those out-of-the-box analytics were stripped out and were difficult to find. The whole idea was that you could use search to be able to find those metrics, but it was really, really difficult. And again, the same problem exists for SharePoint 2013 Online, in the sense that those metrics are very difficult to get a hold of and to create. So really what you have here is a problem where the integration capabilities, integrating these platforms is really difficult. Being able to capture the metrics from each of those environments is incredibly painful from a manual perspective. So you can see where this is going in terms of utilizing a platform and a tool like Cardiolog to be able to connect to all those environments and be able to bring metrics together into a cohesive picture is a very powerful thing. In terms of what we're seeing in the industry from an integration perspective, we're seeing a lot of companies move away from, not only are they running multiple versions of SharePoint, as I mentioned earlier, but they're moving away from using the out-of-the-box social capabilities within SharePoint. I've talked with many companies that are in the process of either abandoning and stripping out and not using the activity feed and the OOB social capabilities, mostly from an activity feed perspective. They still want to be able to use the follow features with following documents, following people, following sites, and so on and so forth. They still want to use those social features that are based on the on-prem capability, but they want to integrate Yammer into that platform. So what we're seeing is a lot of companies that are building out strategies for embedding Yammer feeds into SharePoint sites, where they can take a SharePoint site that was basically just a document repository and really turn it into a people-centric site that gives them the ability to add that social feature, which is similar to what the on-prem social feed capability gave people with that integrating that component into the sites. Now what we're seeing is organizations are embedding Yammer, either through the embed feature or using the Yammer app. The Yammer app by itself, from the Microsoft Store, is not very good. It allows you to post comments, but you can't attach files or upload or do any of the capabilities that the web version for Yammer, the web client, allows you to do. So what we're seeing is a lot of companies are using the embed feature and using the JSON and some of the development capabilities within the Yammer API to actually create really robust feeds inside those SharePoint sites. So now you have this capability where you have social components that are built into the SharePoint platform, and social is really taking off from a utilization perspective. Companies are starting to see the benefits that social provides and what its benefit is, and it's becoming the norm in terms of what organizations are wanting to do with their collaboration platforms. So we're seeing a lot of that happen. What you have to do from an integration perspective is think about how you're going to build this out. So what social features are you going to use in your on-prem platform if you're going to have that? If you're moving to Office 365 and you're going to be using the SharePoint Online capabilities, what does that need to look like, and how are you going to integrate the Yammer capabilities and the SharePoint Online capabilities together? So from a metrics perspective, being able to define this strategy and understand how to measure it and how to work with it is really key to ensuring that your deployment is going to be successful. So from an analytics perspective, deriving, as I mentioned earlier, deriving those out-of-the-box analytics from SharePoint 2013, both on-prem and online, is really difficult. Being able to look at the out-of-the-box analytics in SharePoint, it's really lacking in quality and quantity. Being able to understand what those components are and really create a cohesive picture that allows you to see side-by-side comparisons of the metrics from each of those different silos in one report is really, really hard to put together. You can either use the capabilities, the out-of-the-box capabilities, and write code to be able to access the systems through the APIs to pull that data out if you want. But let's face it, a lot of organizations have a really hard time just maintaining their platform. Having a development team that understands the details of those capabilities is not very practical from an implementation perspective. So a lot of organizations are looking to tools to be able to provide them the capabilities. So, and it's really, really hard to paint that picture from a manual perspective. Even if you were just using one of the various components, like for instance Yammer by itself. Yammer provides out-of-the-box analytics, but it's very, very light in terms of what you can see. You can see, who has the most posts and really light metrics. There's nothing really in terms of detail that you can get into to find the information that you want, and then that's where a tool like Cardiolog can certainly help. So in terms of the overall approach from an analytics life cycle perspective, the standard approach for managing the analytics from your various environments is really based on 5 key components. Setting your goals for adoption. So what is it that you want to measure? How do you want to really understand what it is that you're doing? And you want to keep in mind that if you are using all 3 silos, for instance, how are you, and what metrics are you going to pull from each of those systems to be able to define what it is that you want to understand about the usage of the platform? So things like who are the champions? Who are the people that are really engaged? Who are the people that are engaged in Yammer, and who are the people that are engaged in SharePoint? And is there a delta between those two environments? Are there people that are heavily utilizing Yammer and really engaging in Yammer from an adoption perspective? And how does that compare to the adoption from a SharePoint perspective? And being able to have that clear picture and define what those specific goals are that you need to measure is the first step in really understanding where you guys are going from an analytics perspective and driving your adoption. So then you want to measure your progress. So from there, measuring progress really means looking at defining those specific reports and over time seeing the trends that you're being able to spot and then adapt to those trends. So generating those reports is going to be critical to really understanding where things are going and defining the measurements that you need to be able to see exactly what's going on. From an analytics perspective, what you're going to get from a view around Yammer and SharePoint is who are your champions, who are the people that are really heavy users of that platform. And what that'll do is give you the ability to go to that person and say, hey, thank you very much for being a champion here and for helping us. We would like to enlist you to help others and be able to utilize those individuals in your company to kind of spread the word and be evangelists for your implementation. And what that's going to do from an adoption perspective is it's going to drive further adoption because it isn't IT or the project team that's forcing people to or imparting on people the benefits of the capabilities of the platform. It's actual users in those various departments that are utilizing the platform, and those are your evangelists. So then the next step is basically analyzing that data. So looking at the trends over time to be able to see, when you deployed a site or you deployed a group within Yammer, and being able to watch it over time to see its adoption and its utilization. You can then, based on the reports that you generate, look at how you can optimize your adoption approach. So do we need to have further champions and find more champions in the organization? Do we need to take a different approach from an adoption perspective and really focus on internal marketing? Are there other ways that we can achieve the adoption that we really need based on the data that we're seeing? So one of the issues that you'll find is that when you go to look for analytics tools out in the marketplace, there aren't a lot of tools. Actually, there's really only one, and that is Cardiolog Analytics, that provides you access to SharePoint, Yammer, and SharePoint on-prem. And Jeroen will get into a deeper dive in that from a demo perspective. So one of the key components from Cardiolog's perspective is not only can it connect to all of the various versions that you saw mentioned earlier, SharePoint 2003 all the way up through 2013, and with 2016 coming out in the future, I suspect that Cardiolog is working diligently to ensure that they can capture metrics from that environment as we move to that new version coming next year. Of course, SharePoint Online, the deployment for SharePoint Online isn't going away. In fact, I think what you'll see from a trend perspective is that companies will move headlong towards using SharePoint Online, not only because it provides a cohesive environment within Office 365 in terms of all of the other tools that are kind of combined together to be able to provide a collaboration platform, but you're seeing a lot of organizations that will look at the cost of maintaining an on-prem platform and look at SharePoint Online and realize that the cost-benefit analysis is too great for them to be able to ignore going to the cloud. So you're going to see a lot more SharePoint Online. And of course with Yammer, Yammer's popularity is growing by leaps and bounds, and you're going to see more and more organizations adopt Yammer as a platform. One of my favorite stories from a Yammer perspective is, from an ROI perspective, is the Red Robin case study. One of the things that if you're looking for some anecdotal data on how successful an organization can be by deploying Yammer, look to Red Robin. It's a restaurant company actually based here in Colorado, where I live, but they started using Yammer for their restaurants. And what they do is they have a test kitchen that creates new menu items, and it was taking 18 months for them to be able to get those new menu items out into the restaurants. And they found that was just too long for them to have any success with the products. Trends change really, really quickly in the food industry. So they implemented Yammer in those test restaurants and started using Yammer to be able to engage with the employees. And what they found was not only could they reduce the amount of time that it took to get those new items to the market based on utilizing Yammer and its inherent capabilities, but they started to see an increase in profitability and an increase in retention for each of those restaurants over time. And what they found was that Yammer by itself kind of took off as a social tool inside the restaurants with all of the restaurant staff that were utilizing it. And they were doing, operational hacks where, hey, I'm having a problem with this. How did you guys solve that from one restaurant to another? And they started to see an increase in their profitability based on that communication. So from that perspective, Yammer isn't going away. Yammer is going to be further and tighter and more tightly integrated into the SharePoint platform. So what you're going to want to do from an analytics and integrated analytics perspective is to make sure that you compile a complete picture of using what features across all of your platforms. You want to be able to ensure that those reports show those side-by-side comparisons and defining those analytics and metrics in a context as you integrate your SharePoint and Yammer platforms together. You actually have some contextual information that you could point to and anecdotal information that you can point to say, this is what's happening within those two environments, and here's how we need to respond. And then, of course, what you get is you derive a more complete picture of your social collaboration platform and your adoption process as you guys go forward. So that's it for me. I'm going to pass it back to Yurin. Thank you very much, and we'll take your questions at the end of the session.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Bill. Very interesting information. I'm going to go ahead and dive a little deeper into some of the things that Bill touched on, but dive a little deeper into more of the specific analytics and the trends that we see, talking about social analytics and adoption. So let's dive into a few slides, and then from there we'll get into a short demo as well. So first of all, let's start out with some of the key reasons why our customers ask about analytics for SharePoint and Yammer. So the key here, and I think the bottom line, is that you can only manage what you can measure. So without knowing what's going on in SharePoint, what's going on in Yammer, we can't make changes to improve. If we don't know who's using it and who's not using these technologies, then we can't really allocate training in a good way because we don't know who needs that training. And if we don't know which content is being used and so forth, we can't make those changes in order to improve. So the key for us and for our customers is the idea that we can only manage these technologies once we're able to measure what's going on. If we dive in a little deeper, a few more keys that we see are, first of all, the tracking of adoption. We spend a lot of time and efforts implementing these technologies, building out a strategy. We want to make sure that these technologies are also being used, that our employees are leveraging these technologies, and so we'll talk a little bit about how we can track that adoption with analytics. Measure improved productivity. So Bill gave a wonderful scenario of how that company was able to improve the productivity of their employees, of their products. And the idea is that we can leverage analytics in order to measure that improvement. Collaboration. So of course one of the keys when implementing social platforms is to help collaboration, to use email less and less over time, use more of the social features within SharePoint out of the box and Yammer. And so one of the things we want to do is make sure that people are collaborating, leveraging those technologies. And then finally, the engagement of communities. Again, this all goes back to adoption, but once we provide these platforms and technologies, we want to make sure that our communities really are engaged. We want to make sure that different restaurants are helping each other solve problems, that different departments are able to collaborate in a better way, and we want to make sure that those communities are being used and taken advantage of. A few shifts that we see when talking about social analytics. So there's a very big shift from what used to be the main metric called page views to more social metrics. And so from just content that is most popular, we're seeing a big shift into content that's most influential. And there are a few ways that we can track that. For example, the number of comments on content, the number of likes, ratings, followers, and things of that sort. Oops, let's try that one more time. So again, so intellectual content, we're going to talk less about how many times content has been viewed by our users and more by how much users are interacting with it. So how many people are following it? Does it have a high rating versus other pieces of content? People are liking it, commenting on it, and so forth. The next key shift is around users. So if up till now the main metric was what are employees viewing or how often are they accessing SharePoint and Yammer, we're now going to take a look at metrics that are more about how are these employees interacting with each other, how are they influencing one another. So big shift from unique users to influential users. We care less if a user accessed Yammer 20 times this week and more if they were very active and they added their own comments and posts and things of that sort. So we're going to track users with the most number of followers, users that are posting a lot and commenting, and the most popular profiles are going to be the keys that we see when shifting to more social analytics. And then finally, the third key shift that we see is going to be around community. And again, the shift here is from the usage that we would talk about up till the past few years, so things such as content being accessed and so forth, to the actual engagement within communities. So are there active discussions? Are there questions and answers? So people are able to help each other and contribute to others and so forth. So that's a brief introduction to some of the shifts that we see when talking about social analytics and tracking adoption within these tools. Let's go ahead and hop into a quick demo, and then we'll get to some questions as well. And again, if there are any questions, just send those through the GoToWebinar panel. All right, let's jump into the browser here, and I'll go ahead and full screen my browser so you can see a little more information. All right, there we go. So we're going to take a quick look at the Cardiac Analytics user interface and show some of the things that myself and Bill mentioned throughout the slides a few moments ago. So here in the Cardiac user interface, there are different tabs here on the left-hand side with different areas. The first one that I want to share with you is this Analysis Center. And here in the center of it, you can see the dashboard with different meters, charts, and tables. And off to the left-hand side, you can see this SharePoint tree structure or hierarchy. So the first thing you can see here is what Bill was talking about earlier, where we can track several different environments. So here we have a 2010 farm, 2013 farm, SharePoint Online tenant, and we'll see Yammer in a few moments as well. But that's the first idea, that we can track all these environments, even this hybrid deployment, with a single analytics tool. So the idea, if I own all these environments, I can create a dashboard across all of my farms to show all of the top users, all the unused content across all these farms, or I can drill down to a specific farm, a site, or drill down even deeper to a specific list, library list item, like a specific document, announcement, blog post, a user, and so forth, to get instant information for those lower levels of content. So what I can do is select any object. I'll take this site, for example, click on it, and what we'll receive is an instant dashboard for that site. So again, this can be a community, it can be a team site, and really any other piece of content. And then what we receive here is this instant dashboard with data for the site that we just selected. So very, very easy for an analyst to come in here and select any object within the environment in order to get these instant and ad hoc reports. The second area of the tool is called the Report Center, and here we can create scheduled dashboards for our users. So we can create a dashboard for each site, for the owners of that site. We can create a dashboard for different lists and so forth. Let's build a dashboard together, show you how easy it is and how detailed the reports can get. We'll choose a blank report, again, to show you how easy it is even if we do start out from scratch. We'll give our report a name. And then finally, how often do we want Cardlock to send this out to our colleagues, once every day, week, or month? We'll take once every week, for example. All right, so here we have this blank report in edit mode. In order to see the metrics you saw a few moments ago in the Analysis Center, all I do is click here on the Add button, and what appears in different categories of analytics, so everything from page views to visitors, search, social, and so forth. When I hover over a category, I can view all the metrics within that category. And then when I hover over a metric, I can actually specify how I want to show the data in my dashboard as a chart, meter, map, or table. Let's take the chart, for example. I'll change the date range here to show us some demo data as well. So very easy to customize any date range you'd like to see information for. And then we can see here a trend over time for the month of January. Let's also add a page views table. And I'll add a meter as well. So it's very easy to drag and drop all these widgets onto the dashboard depending on what data you'd like to see. And it's also very, very easy for a user to customize these widgets. No need for any IT background. We just double-click on one of these widgets. By default here, we're showing the most popular content within our environment. But you may want to show your users, your farm owner, your site owners, what content is least popular or what content has not been accessed at all. We can change this to 0, the minimum value. And then here you'll see content with 0 page views. Again, content that no one has accessed over the course of an entire month. Now, more than that, besides showing all content, we can filter by specific content type. Let's going to see only documents or blog posts that are most popular, least popular. We'll take sites for this example. And then here you can see we have 4 sites in our environment. And here's a great example for that idea of actionable metrics, the idea that once we get this data, we can easily analyze it to make improvements in our environment. You can see here I have 2 sites, the HR site and my team site, that have not been accessed at all over the course of an entire month. Just imagine how much great information we have in our HR site and how much time we're spending building up that site and no one is accessing it. Well, if they don't need that content, let's stop investing so much time in that site. Or maybe they do need it, but they just don't know how to get to it, in which case we'll put a nice big link on the home page of our site to make sure people are aware of how to get to the human resources site. So that's a great example for actionable metrics. Let's save that for now. Same with this chart, very easy to customize. Just double click on it. And I can compare different date ranges, for example. I can customize the chart look and feel. We'll compare January to December 2014, for example. All right, so here it's all fake demo data, so it's identical, but that's the idea. Very, very easy to compare date ranges. So again, if you've launched a new environment, or if you've launched a new campaign in that environment and so forth, and new tools, you can see how that change has impacted on the usage within that environment. So compare the month before and after that change. Diving more into adoption metrics, we'll talk about visitors as I go back to the Add button. There's lots of information here about who our users are, how are they accessing our environment. So for example, here at the bottom of our screen of this list, you can see metrics like operating system and browsers. So how are they accessing our environments? And do we have to create maybe mobile apps for specific devices? And if so, Cardilog with these reports can help show or tell us which devices are most popular. Another metric I'd like to add is called the AD user groups metric. So again, because Cardilog is built for SharePoint, there's lots of metrics that it can provide that generics like Google simply cannot. Here you can see usage by the different groups within your organization. And again, talking about actionable metrics, I can scroll down to the bottom of this list and right away show you who are the groups who don't use SharePoint and Yammer very often. So you right away can pinpoint them and offer them more training and more support to improve their adoption rates. As opposed to tackling adoption from an organization-wide standpoint, we can now do so and tackle adoption for the actual groups who aren't using the platforms very often. Other categories include navigation, so are we moving about the portal, and search. What people are searching for within SharePoint, that can be the out-of-the-box SharePoint search or the fast search engine. And we can show exactly what they're searching for, what they're not finding, what are the failed searches, and so forth. But moving on to more social metrics and talking more about Yammer as well. Here within the social category, you can see lots of metrics for different SharePoint social actions, everything from liking content to what content has been rated and what rating it's received. Let's add a few of these metrics as well. We'll take influential users, for example. Let's go ahead and add a few of these, and then we'll take a look. All right, so as opposed to seeing by groups, you can see each user and how many followers these users have, so who are the most influential users in regards to their peers. Just below that content, you can see how many people are following each piece of content, how many likes received, comments, and so forth. So very easy to analyze the more social actions and social adoption within our deployment as well. Next, taking a look at Yammer, you can see here Cardilog provides many out-of-the-box Yammer reports. So everything from influential users to group activity, inactive groups and active users, likes, and so forth. Let's add a few of these metrics to show you a few quick examples. And again, I'll add a few metrics quickly, and then we can take a closer look at them. Let's start out here with group activity. Here you can see each one of our groups within Yammer, and again, see exactly how much engagement we have within those groups or communities. So how many members, posts, shares, and so forth, helping us understand which groups aren't taking advantage of the tool, which groups might need more training, and so forth. We can also take a look at inactive groups, or in this case, inactive users. So different users who have not used Yammer for an entire month. So in this case, we define our date range as the month of January. We can see all of those inactive users. Let's go back here one more time to show you a few more of the metrics here from Yammer. We can talk about praised users and who's been praising those users. We're talking about influential content, which we'll add to our dashboard. All right, so as opposed to who are the most influential users that we saw earlier, we can see here the content that people really need, that they're following, that they're sharing with their colleagues, and so forth. So that's a very brief introduction into Cardilog and how we can easily drag and drop the widgets we want onto the dashboard. And they can be across all different environments, whether if it's a hybrid SharePoint on-prem and SharePoint online deployment together with Yammer. As we talked about earlier, the idea is to have a single analytics tool to track all of these environments. All right, we'll go ahead and jump into and take some questions. So if you do have any questions, feel free to send those over through the GoToWebinar panel. If you have any questions for myself or Bill, and I'll start reading them off, and we can go ahead and get all of these answered. All right, so a few questions here. Bill, the first one, Samantha's asking, will Yammer cancel the need for social capabilities within SharePoint?
So the answer is no, actually. The social capabilities in SharePoint, what Yammer is really doing is replacing the activity feed. There are capabilities within Yammer that are a little bit different from a social perspective than SharePoint had or has today. But in essence, what Microsoft is doing is they're combining those two capabilities together. So you'll still be able to follow people, follow documents, follow sites, and the similar capability as Microsoft continues to integrate those two platforms together is they will bring those environments where the follow kind of leads both from a Yammer and a SharePoint perspective. So right now they are two different silos, and so as Microsoft continues to integrate those two platforms, you're going to see those capabilities will kind of entwine as you go forward. So those social capabilities in SharePoint that you see today won't go away. Really, the only capability that is not being enhanced any further from a social perspective is the activity feed. So in Microsoft has stated that SharePoint 2016, which will be released, I think they are actually previewing it at the Ignite conference in Chicago this May, and is scheduled for release next year. There will be some additional capabilities from a social perspective with respect to SharePoint by itself, but they're also working very hard to make the integration with Yammer more seamless. So you're going to start to see the capabilities where you can search for documents in SharePoint, and that search will also federate to documents that have been stored and saved in Yammer as well. So you're going to see that tighter integration in future versions as you go forward.
Perfect. Thanks, Bill. Next question here. Let's take a look. All right. Next question is from Donna, and she's asking, how do you see Chatter playing in the same enterprise with SharePoint and Yammer? Chatter and Yammer together could confuse adoption of either.
Absolutely. There are many social tools out there. So organizations really have to decide what it is they're going to do and how they're going to, what tools they're going to use from a social perspective. I've seen organizations that have deployed SharePoint and are using the SharePoint social features, as well as using Jive and bringing Jive into the picture, where Jive is its own social platform. And what you're creating is you're creating silos. I think the benefit that Microsoft is providing from a social perspective is that the social capabilities that Chatter has are pretty similar to the social capabilities that Yammer has. However, Chatter has a much tighter integration with Salesforce. So because it is a Salesforce platform, so your organization needs to make a decision in terms of which is the right path for you guys to go forward. And you're absolutely right. If you're using too many social tools, there certainly can be confusion, and it makes it difficult for organizations to get widespread adoption when you have multiple tools that you're providing your employees. So you're absolutely right. There is a concern that you should have. That has to be met by a decision your organization needs to make from a strategic perspective in terms of which direction you're going to go.
All right, next question. Mark is asking, we're currently using SharePoint 2010 out-of-the-box analytics. Can we use the same reports when we migrate to Office 365?
I'm guessing no, because some of the reports that were built into 2010 no longer exist in 2013, and SharePoint Online is 2013. So I know that Office 365 has some additional analytics reports that they've created that may be similar to what you're already gathering, but the 2010 platform had a very robust set of analytics that was built into a separate component that was installed as a service inside of that SharePoint platform. And they deprecated that service when they went to 2013. So Microsoft tried to rectify the issue by basically turning on search against the analytics database or the analytics components within the SharePoint platform, and allowing organizations to create search reports, but it doesn't come even close to what the capabilities of the 2010 platform were. So unfortunately, what you're used to using in 2010 is no longer going to be available on that platform, which is maybe why a tool like Cardiolog Analytics can give you those reports that you're used to for 2010 out of the box, and that are certainly much more robust than is available in 2013.
All right. A few questions here around the demo, so I'll quickly answer those. First, Steve is asking, how do we define influential users? So the reports that I showed Steve are going to be based on the number of followers those users have. But you can also define that in Cardiolog by how much content they viewed, and also how many users are praising them as well. So there are a few ways to define an influential user. Next, Melvin, do you provide any Yammer reports on trending topics? So the answer is yes. We can show different trending topics within the tool as well. Hashtags and things of that sort can be tracked. Dan is asking, what other social platforms other than Yammer does Cardiolog support? So there are several. We can also track things like Citrion as well. And Dan, if there's something specific that you'd like to track, let me know. I'm happy to discuss that. Brian is asking, with regard to SharePoint Online, where would Cardiolog sit in order to access all this data on the cloud as well? So there's a few options there. First of all, Cardiolog does come in a SaaS offering where you would simply use the on-demand service, and we would connect to your Yammer SharePoint Online environment. The second option is to deploy an on-prem version of Cardiolog, either on your servers or on an Azure server. So again, the idea is that you would own the Cardiolog product and the database and so forth, and that would simply connect to your SharePoint Online environment. And I'll gladly send you some more information about that architecture as well. All right, Dan, following up with this question, NewsGator. So yes, NewsGator, I believe they changed their name to Citrion recently, so we can track the NewsGator and Citrion technology. Kalyan is asking, can we show reports in the dashboards in SharePoint site pages? And the answer is yes. You can create a web part out of any of the reports that we showed in the demo, and simply import that web part into any SharePoint page to display the data there. Melvin asking about pricing. Is your product price based on per user? So it depends what you want to track. If we're talking about SharePoint on-prem, the license is based on the number of servers that you want to track, not users. If we're talking about cloud environments like SharePoint Online or Yammer, there the licensing is per user, but actually it's per bulk number of users. Saravana is asking if we can track OneDrive for Business as well, and the answer is yes. Brings us back to the original topic where one tool can track all of your environments, so whether if it's SharePoint, OneDrive, Yammer, Office 365, and so forth. You can track all those environments with a single tool. Another question from Brian, does CardLog show data from this moment forward, or is it also able to pick up past data to generate these reports? So it depends what we're tracking. If we're tracking SharePoint on-prem, then we'll only start to collect our own data once a tool is deployed, but we can import historic IIS logs in order to show you historic data. For Yammer also, we can show historic data because we connect to the Yammer API to pull in the analytics information. The only place where the answer would be no to that question is for SharePoint Online, where there are no logs that we can get to. So in that case, we'd only show data from this moment moving forward. So that's in regards to historic data. Let's see if there are any more questions here. All right, Bill, I see that's all the questions we have for now. So for now, I'll thank you for taking the time to walk us through the information this morning. It was really great.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. It was great working with you guys, and thanks, everybody, for attending.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time. And we will be sending out a recording in the next 24 hours. Thank you, and have a great day.